So I'm not really sure how this whole LinkedIn Live is working, but I thought I would go along and share just a couple of thoughts that I have around this whole idea at the moment that we're seeing incredible press around, right? This idea of the Great Resignation and people leaving the workforce in droves. And it's true. There's a ton that's being reported on this, and people are talking about it in every conversation that I have. I've been fortunate enough to travel to the UK 2 weeks ago, to Canada last week, and meet with clients, and it's a subject of conversation that's happening all the time. What's interesting is that you see the article from the Wall Street Journal, which talks about the fact that people are leaving and what can be done about it. There's an article from Barron's in this week's newspaper. Equally, in Bloomberg, people are talking about sort of what are the options. And in Fast Company cited four reasons for why this was all happening. They said, first of all, COVID, which is completely understandable. The fact that people are reluctant to go into offices and go and kind of re-enter the office place or the workplace. The second is related to COVID, and it's this idea that it's harder to get childcare, it's harder to find kind of options for transportation that don't involve necessarily going in public transport if you're not comfortable with that. So it's a very big factor and a contributing factor, but most notably is this idea of our childcare and what do you do if children can't get vaccinated, which they can't presently. The third then is this idea of an existential crisis that people are experiencing. We've suddenly realized that perhaps we want to reconsider what we're doing with our lives. And as I've said so many times in conversations with my clients, we spend more time awake at work than we do at home. And that was certainly true when we were traveling into the office, but it's equally true now. We're spending an inordinate amount of time sitting in our home offices with initially doors closed, but now I think most doors are open, and kids and dogs and whatever else runs in and out, and we're figuring out how to integrate it all. But I think a lot of people are starting to think, what do I want to spend my life doing? Do I want to spend my days working on PowerPoint presentations or data analysis or working on something that ultimately doesn't bring real meaning to who they are? And then the fourth idea is this idea that because you've had this idea of COVID, this factor of COVID that's impacted so many of us, and the childcare and the fact that we're thinking about what we want to do with our life, workers have now got this uncommonly unique power and strength in their bargaining position. And they're able to really consider what it is that they want to do now, and aren't prepared to work with companies that they don't sort of find strong alignment with. And I think all of that's true. I really do. I think that makes a ton of sense. But I actually think that if we really want to try and understand what's happening, we've got to reverse engineer the problem a little bit. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that the economists and sociologists are wrong. But I do think we've missed a huge piece. In all of the analysis I've read, nowhere has it talked about the thing that I think is probably most impactful to all of us, that is the trigger behind a lot of this. So by any accounts, I did some crude math, and I think that if lockdown happened sometime around mid-March of last year, by my calculation, that's about 610 days ago. Now, let's take out weekends, because not all of us work 7 days a week. So if you're fortunate enough and you're not working 7 days a week or weekends, that probably takes it down to about 430, 440 days. For 430 or 440 days, most workers have been going into their offices at home, or sitting across on a dining room table, or sharing an apartment with flatmates, or whatever the case might be, where that's been their existence, that's been their work. The serendipitous conversations that happened when you were walking into a conference room or walking into a building even, or going for drinks after work, did not happen. All of that spontaneity, all of the things that we love about life were taken away. And unfortunately, what offices and businesses did is they said, right, we'll send you an office chair so that you can be more comfortable sitting in front of that screen that you're going to stare at all day. Or we might even buy you another screen to stare at all day. But what they failed to do was actually change how the work was done. And so what people experienced was that what was happening simply in person before was shifted online. And everybody thought, or certainly a lot of managers and leaders thought, well, that'll be okay. We're still getting the work done because that's a manager's priority, right, to get the work done. the idea that the teams were mentally sound and feeling inspired and challenged and so on became a second priority to some degree. And what we've had is now 430 or 440 days of the same thing. I know companies that have shifted their routines, whether they're weekly calls, and those weekly calls still happen, but they're just happening now online. And the idea that sort of what we all do, which is it's how humans have evolved, the fact that we go out and seek new things and we do new things and we get new experiences. For a lot of people, they've had no new experiences. They've experienced nothing new. They haven't met new people genuinely, with the exception of perhaps going online to a new Zoom call. But how many people can you get intimate with on a Zoom call, right? How many people can you be vulnerable with, or share common interests, or get to know one another? And so even with breakout rooms, and thankfully we've had those, but the idea that we've had 440 days of doing the same thing shouldn't surprise us now, where we've got employees saying, you know what, I'm going to go and create my own new thing. I'm going to leave this company. I'm not sure what I'm going to go and do, but I've got skills as strong and as good as anybody else who's spent 440 days behind a screen. I'm going to go and see what I can find somewhere else. My hypothesis then is that one of the big things that we've missed, and what's the cause of this, is that we've actually really failed to innovate in how we've led our teams. We've expected them to simply carry on. And I don't know about you, but there's only so much. I got incredibly bored, probably towards the middle of last year, with calls that were happening in the same times, and sometimes different time zones, but certainly the same times, and covering the same agendas. And by contrast, the companies that did really, really well were those that were able to figure out, all right, if we met once before, we're now going to meet 3 times a week. And we're going to shake it up a little bit, and this is what those 3 calls are going to look like and sound like. Some people did this and did exceptionally well. They didn't simply assume that you could take what was happening offline and shift it digitally into Zoom world. So I would suggest that, yes, we can talk about COVID and we can blame childcare. Those perhaps might be manifestations now. But the fact of the matter is that it was the failure of leadership to innovate in how they manage their teams that got us to this situation in the first place. Because not every company is experiencing this. Let's be clear, right? The companies that are experiencing this should probably take a long step, or the managers whose teams are experiencing this should probably take a step back and, number one, accept some responsibility. Not just blame the economy or inflation or the fact that we've had COVID, or the fact that employees are now empowered. That's a cop-out. That's an easy excuse, right? I think the real sensible managers are stepping back and perhaps with some heartfelt humility going, perhaps I caused this. Perhaps I didn't create enough excitement. And it is an understanding and appreciation for how sort of human biology works and how our brains work, and the fact that we seek out new things. And we didn't do that for so long. So, I guess I've just become really frustrated a little bit at listening to this narrative around blame COVID and blame the economy. We share some blame as leaders and managers of teams, and I think it's about time that we kind of step back and figure out what are we going to do differently, because all is not lost and we can learn from this. All right, I'm not quite sure how the Zoom, how the LinkedIn Live works, so I'm just going to wrap this one up now, and hopefully you'll have all seen where to post or where to see it. I'm not even sure. All right, we'll speak to you all soon. We'll be back with another update on something else exciting pretty soon.